parts. To begin, I will turn it over to Larry Horan, who will provide an update on the special session in October and share insights onto what to expect during the upcoming 30-day regular session.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Larry Horan, state lobbyist for the city of Las Cruces. It's always good to be in front of you as we head into another regular legislative session. Breaking news is we're in our second special session of the legislature today as of about 1 p.m. They called themselves back into special session again, so I'll go over both special sessions and what they're dealing with. The first special session was first in October 5th and 6th. They passed 5 total pieces of legislation, primarily to deal with the changes at the federal level that came with the budget resolution passed by Congress and signed by President Trump. Dealing with general appropriations to bolster against future cuts to the Medicaid program. They put money in to help people pay premiums under the Affordable Care Act if those tax subsidies are not extended. They put more money into the SNAP program benefits, and then they made some changes to the criminal competency law that they passed last year to allow for Metro Court judges, which only applies in the city of Albuquerque, to also apply to utilize the criminal competency challenges that they passed in the last session. And then also they changed rules to immunization based on the changes that came from the U.S. Department of Health. We're heading into the 2026 session, and I'll remind you, short sessions come every 2 years, 30-day sessions. 2026 will be a 30-day session, so the subject matter that the legislators can consider is limited to revenue matters, appropriations, messages from the governor, and also bills that have been previously vetoed in another session. What we're seeing this year, and we're already starting to see the signs of it, is the budget is starting to constrict and revenue is starting to constrict at the state of New Mexico. Price of oil is down, production is still strong, but as anticipated, it's starting to peak, the production and the revenue we're getting from the oil. And so we'll start to see that in the budget, and we also may see it as it relates to funding that's available for capital outlay and other projects from the legislators. Although it's not capital outlay is based upon severance tax revenue, they also have a permanent fund they can issue bonds related to it. The past several years, all of the capital outlay for the state has been, they've used excess general fund cash. So this year, you're already seeing signals from the legislators, particularly the Finance and Appropriations Committee, that they think the budget's gonna start slowing down. So many of the legislators who are in now have not experienced any kind of a downturn or shortfall. We're not at a point where it's considered a downturn. It's just a slowing of growth. So what does that mean? The GROW funds, which also had been known as House Bill 2 junior money, they were on a 2-year cycle in 2024. So if they were going to extend them, this would be the session that they probably would extend them. Because of the slowed growth, there's probably not going to be excess general fund revenue, or they're going to have to spend it in other places, so we're not likely to see GROW funds. What are we going to see? In the special session in October, there was discussion going into the special session about passage of the medical compacts. There's 11 compacts that were introduced in the last 60-day session that will help make it easier for healthcare providers in New Mexico or out of the state to actually practice in New Mexico. We only participate in 1 or 2 now. There's 11 that they're looking to, that they were introduced, that we were looking to join. They did not pass in the 60-day session. They weren't quite ready, meaning legislative leadership and the governor's office weren't ready to come to a resolution on how to deal with the compacts during the special session. But legislative leadership did make a commitment that they will address and hear about the medical compacts in the first half of this coming 30-day session. And also, there's significant movement, discussion, and I would say anxiety on both sides as it relates to the Medical Malpractice Act. Malpractice Act was changed in 2021. I think New Mexico came out with a report last year talking about needed changes to the Medical Malpractice Act. So you have providers, hospitals on one side of the issue, trial lawyers and patient advocates on the other side. This is another area where we'll see something in the 30-day session. Not sure yet whether or not a compromise will be reached at that point, but the momentum is building. I would also say emotions are getting hot as it relates to the Medical Malpractice Act, and so we're starting to see this issue come to a boiling point, which is a lot of times what it takes to make a change in a significant law like the Medical Malpractice Act. So we'll see that in the coming 30-day session. What else? Further possible mitigation of federal cuts as it relates to Medicaid and SNAP. Today, the special session is focused solely on SNAP benefits. The governor was able to fund 10 days of SNAP benefits that were scheduled to stop at the beginning of November because of the federal shutdown. They were able to do that with emergency funds that they had available, which was to the tune of $30 million. That would have expired. Today would be the last day they would be able to fund SNAP benefits. So they called themselves into special session to appropriate up to $300 million from reserves that live in the healthcare authority's budget to fully fund SNAP benefits through November if the shutdown does not end. If the shutdown ends, which we're seeing signals that it's close to ending, that money, that $300 million, then will go into the Medicaid trust fund that they created last year. Again, tax credits for the health insurance exchange. The big issue at the federal level is whether or not those tax credits are going to be extended into next year for people buying insurance on the health insurance exchange. If that does not happen, then the legislature has it called the Healthcare Affordability Fund that can help people pay for their premiums. So we'll see issues again related to that. Tax package. Last year, the tax package was vetoed by the governor. It had just a couple of, it was not, I wouldn't say it was a sweeping tax package. It had a few things to the tune of about $150 million of tax changes. This year, because of what's happening with the price of oil and the constriction on the budget, there's probably not capacity for them to pass it, have a tax package. So we don't know yet. They've had discussions at the Revenue Stabilization Committee, which is the interim committee that deals with tax issues. Senator Kerry Hamblin is chair of that committee this year and also chair of the tax committee in the Senate. They're considering potential tax package, but as we get closer, it's looking less and less like we're going to have one. One issue that will come up as it relates to dealing with medical services and going back to that Think New Mexico report, one of the recommendations in the Think New Mexico report was to eliminate the gross receipts tax on medical providers. What happens when the state does that? We saw it when they eliminated gross receipts tax on food. It would have happened on medical provider gross receipts tax elimination. If they eliminate the entire gross receipts tax, they take the state portion and they also eliminate the local portion. And so that has a significant fiscal impact on cities. And so when the Municipal League took a position on that legislation last year, it was to oppose the legislation because of how it would have impacted cities. So we had, I made a presentation along with Allison Nichols from the Municipal League to the Revenue Stabilization Committee last week. What was the ask? The ask was generally going forward to protect local revenues, if you're going to do something like take away the gross receipts tax on medical gross receipts, take away the state's portion if the state chooses to enact that because that's their revenue, and leave the local portion alone because cities and counties have a fewer revenue sources in the state of New Mexico. And so the request would be going forward as their considered tax policy, leave the cities alone. Don't hold us harmless, don't make hold harmless payments. Just leave the tax in place as it relates to local governments. And so I'll stand for any questions now, or if you think it's appropriate later, if there's anything you would like me to cover about what has happened or what's coming in the next 60-day session. And then it is the governor's last regular session, although we've had 2 special sessions this year, so even after the session ends in February, she could call the legislators back in to deal with some of these kind of big ticket issues.
All right, thank you, Larry. We'll wait for questions at the end. Okay, questions at the end.